last night at a meeting that we have. Oh, you were there? Oh, okay. Well, then you probably already got it. But if you'd like another copy, it's right here.
I got that. You mean
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to our seminar for pastors for the Portage County Tea Party. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and I'm the Executive Director of the Portage County Tea Party. You don't have to worry about the Zawistowski part. Tom will get you where you're going, and it's actually spelled out here all the way across the bottom of the page of the agenda, so you'll be fine. As you know, as you can see by the cameras, we are videotaping this because we've had a lot of interest on this topic from not only our members, but from other groups around the state and around the country. And I personally am extremely excited to have you here to have this discussion with us. The Portage County Tea Party, as I'll explain in my presentation, is a relatively new organization. We've been doing a lot of reading. We probably have more questions than answers, but hopefully we're going to be able to share some things with you today that you don't know, and I certainly expect I'll be able to hear some things from you that we don't know, and together we're going to find a way forward that's good for our country and good for our congregations and good for our citizens. We begin all of our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would please stand. The flag is over here. We'd like to do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We always begin our meetings with a prayer as well. Is there someone who would volunteer to say a prayer for us? We have pastors. Usually I don't have pastors. So, I mean, it's got to be, yes, would you please say a prayer for us?
Let's pray. God, I thank you for this format that you've afforded, Lord, and the interest that people have in this great country, the greatest country around the world, Lord. May we be concerned with evangelism, seeing the lost saved, and Lord, ultimately you glorified, and I believe we can do so in this format, this setting. And God, I pray for your blessing on our country, on our nation, on your people. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to first start off by giving you a very brief overview of what the Tea Party is, because we have found in the presentations that we've done that there's a lot of confusion. Some of it is intentionally caused by the media about who the Tea Party is, what our goals are, what we're about. So I'm going to just take a little bit of time here to go through that, and then we're going to get into the reason why we're at this meeting. As you can see on the screen, this is a picture of our first Tea Party, which was held in Ravenna, Ohio on July 11th. So July 11th of 2009. So we're not a very old organization. This was held at the on the Portage County Courthouse lawn on July 11th. We had about 340 people there at the time. What is the Tea Party? We are about 15 months old. We're a citizens group, and we have grown from that 340 people on July 11th to over 1,800 members today, and are growing rapidly, literally on a daily basis. We do have an older demographic. A lot of our people are, seniors, are retired, but we do have, younger people. People ask us, well, why is that? And part of that is a function of time. Part of it is, if you're raising a family, it's a lot harder to go and do these type of things. So we do have, as far as our active membership, an older demographic. What I think surprises most people in the media who want to portray us as rubes and other things, we actually are a much better educated population than the general population. We have more PhDs, we have more master's degrees, we have more doctorates, we have people who have been trained, we have a higher percentage of military people, so we have an interesting mix, but we are anything but rubes. You can see across the bottom that the majority of us are 65% are what I call disenfranchised Republicans, people who believe in conservative values but do not believe that the Republican Party lives those conservative values. We do have a decent number of Democrats in our party, 15% of the people in the Portage County Tea Party. Now, these people are what we call old school Republican, or Democrats. These are the Hubert Humphrey, John Kennedy Democrats. These are not the far left liberal Democrats you see today, and a lot of them express the frustration that their party has been stolen from them, that they are outsiders in their own party. They didn't leave the Democratic Party left them, is kind of their take. Whereas the Republicans, we left the Republican Party. So you got to have a difference of opinion there. Okay, what do we stand for? a lot of people say is all you guys do is, say, shout and carry signs and say no to everything. But that's far from the truth. We stand for things. We stand most of all for a belief in the Constitution. We believe that the Constitution is a literal document. It's not subject to interpretation. It means what it says, and it should be enforced literally. And we are appalled and astonished by how our Constitution, both our Ohio Constitution and our federal Constitution, is consistently ignored by our governing leaders, and how often we see unconstitutional events taking place without question, without anyone standing up for the Constitution. So if you want to understand the Tea Party, you have to start with that. You have to start with the Constitution. We also are very strong about states' rights. We believe that states' rights is an integral part of the functioning of our republic. In other words, there was a balance that our founders put in place that is now out of balance because the federal government has usurped so much of the states' rights that we really are not functioning properly according to the Constitution because of that imbalance. And I'll give a perfect example of that. I think it's one that I use in my presentations. There was a talk show where they were discussing the abortion issue, which has certainly been one of the most divisive issues in my lifetime. I'm 55 years old. We've been arguing this for 55 years, okay, and longer. And they were talking to Judge Bork. I don't know if you remember Judge Bork, but he was the one that did not get into the Supreme Court. He was borked, and his name's actually in the dictionary as an adjective describing something that happens to you, okay? They asked him what was the answer to the abortion issue. And his answer was states' rights. Because the problem with issues like abortion is if you try to impose them across the entire country, you lose those individual rights and choices you would normally have under the Constitution. The reason we had 50 sovereign states, and here in the United States, at least today, most people don't realize when we talk about states, we meant nations. When the colonies were founded, when we formed the United States of America, Spain was a state, France was a state, Germany was a state. They weren't part of a whole, they were sovereign. And our colonies were sovereign. And so when they set up the Constitution, that sovereignty was critical. And so if you had states' rights today, you could vote in Ohio, whether you were pro-life or pro-choice. And once that vote was taken by the citizens of that state, you could make a decision about whether you live here or do not live here. But you could move, and you could use your freedoms to go to places where you believe that what they did is correct. The problem with abortion is they're trying to make it so you can't do that. Where are you going to go if it becomes the law of the land? So states' rights is a significant portion of the problem, and it's something we're very strong on. We believe in free enterprise and capitalism. We believe that the goals of the Tea Party, what we want for ourselves individually, which is life and liberty and the ability to pursue our own happiness, is impossible without capitalism and free enterprise. That's the path to that opportunity to do what we want to do, to those freedoms and those liberties. And yet we find our government is attacking business. That our business is our country is not even saying let's keep an even playing field. They're saying business is bad. They're greedy. They don't do good things for us. And that's just false. It's just a representation of what capitalism really is. Capitalism is the engine of freedom, and we must support it and we must defend it. We obviously believe in fiscally responsible government, a core tenet. The Tea Party, the T in Tea Party stands for taxed enough already. And we believe that we are taxed enough already. It doesn't mean that we won't pay taxes. Again, another misconception is that, you Tea Party people are just greedy, selfish people who don't care about children or old people or anything. You just want to keep all the money for yourself. And when I hear those kind of comments, I say, excuse me, but we pay all the taxes. We pay all the taxes. And we are happy to pay the taxes for our country to run. We just want to get something for our money. It's that simple. We're taxed enough already. We see the waste and we know it's wrong. And that's why we want fiscally responsible government. With that, if you study the Founding Fathers, if you study the Constitution, you will find that a key part of fiscally responsible government is smaller government that is closer to you. In the Constitution, the founders warned about government being detached from the people. And what we have now is these people in Washington, D.C., who are our elected officials, but they spend all their time there. Why aren't they here? As I say in my presentations to the townships when we go out, we have these incredible inventions in the United States. One of them is called a jet plane, and you can fly from one place to another, okay? And when you're in Congress and you go to vote about 90 days a year, you could pretty much stay here in the district and go there when you need to vote and not live there. It's very convenient for the lobbyists. It's not very convenient for us citizens. And so those are some of the problems that we have. Our government needs to return to us so we can watch them, so we can own them, so we can be responsible for our government. Because in the Constitution, we the people are responsible for our government, not our elected officials. That's a myth. So that takes us to the last point on our slide here, which is individual responsibility. We do not believe in the nanny state. We think the nanny state is destructive. We think the nanny state is socialism or communism. What we believe in is individual responsibility. We believe that we can take care of ourselves. We believe if we cannot take care of ourselves, that our family can help take care of us. We believe that if our family cannot take care of us, we believe that our church and our family can help take care of us. If our church and our family cannot take care of us, we believe that our community can help take care of us. But we do not believe that the government takes care of us. And the evidence is everywhere. Take any example you want. Take Hurricane Katrina. Hurricane Katrina, supposedly the greatest disaster to ever befall America. Who put more money into New Orleans? Churches and social organizations or the government? Churches, Salvation Army, people like the United Way. They were there first, they were there most, and they're there longest. Take Haiti. We have an earthquake. Oh, we ride in, we got our uniforms, our flags, we fly in, we're bringing aid. But the people who do the real work are the American people, through their agencies, through their churches. We can take care of ourselves. We don't need their help. And quite often when they say they're giving us help, it's no help at all. It makes matters worse. So that's what we stand for. What the Tea Party is not, despite the media's fondest wishes, we are not controlled by the Republican Party. Matter of fact, it is the opposite. What you will find as you get involved in the Tea Party is that we are pretty much at war with the Republican Party. We are fighting over their soul because they've lost their soul. They don't know what they stand for. We have probably more respect for the Democratic Party. We totally disagree with them, but we at least respect them for believing what they say and do. Dennis Kucinich may think he sees UFOs, but Dennis Kucinich believes what he says and does what he says and is an honest representative of the people. We respect that. We don't agree with him. We'd love to vote him out of office this November, but we respect him. The problem we've had with conservatives is that they're conservative in name only, and we are not controlled by the Republican Party. The Portage County Tea Party has never received a dime from the Republican Party, and we are at war with them, and I think that's a good thing for both them and us. Second thing, we are not a party. Again, the media wants to say Sarah Palin is the head of the Tea Party, and these are Tea Party candidates. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. All the Tea Parties in this country are individually organized, free-thinking organizations. We do collaborate. We talk to each other. We send emails. We try to understand what we're thinking, what we're doing. But we are not a party. We are a movement, a grassroots movement of people. And truly a grassroots movement. Despite what Nancy Pelosi says about AstroTurf, the fact of the matter is, in their political lifetimes, they have never seen the Tea Party before. There has never been a movement of citizens who have, on their own volition, have risen up to get involved in the political environment at the size and the scope and the depth of the Tea Party. And so that goes to my last part, that we are not out-of-touch radicals. We are the majority. 70% of all Republicans say that they are either Tea Party members or they believe in the Tea Party or they support our stances. Over 50% of all Americans believe what the Tea Party stands for is the right thing. Okay? That's hardly a minority. It's hardly a radical fringe. Okay, and yet I hear media people constantly saying, they're a radical fringe element that really will have no say in anything. They're wrong. What do we want? We think we want some things that are very simple. We think we want simple, common sense things that your congregation members would do if it was their own personal lives. We want to stop the borrowing, particularly from the communist Chinese. We think there's a bit of a security risk there to give them the ability to shut down our economy. We believe that we need to stop the spending. The problem in the United States is not that we don't have enough money. It's that we can't stop spending it. It's that simple. They don't know the word stop. From our viewpoint, we need some adult supervision. We have a bunch of teenagers running our country where you give them their allowance on Sunday night, and by Thursday, they're saying, can I have some more because I don't have money for the movies or for a pizza on Friday. They don't have any discipline. And that's why you need free markets and capitalism, because it imposes discipline. But we need them to stop the spending. We have plenty of money for medicine, for schools, for everything. We need to stop the spending. And that is tied to stopping the growth of government. We are concerned, we are greatly concerned about the concept of government jobs growing in order to create a voting bloc. We are concerned about government using the hiring of people as a way to retain their power. That's not what the Constitution was about. And we are concerned about the growth of government, and we want to see government reduced so that they follow the Constitution. We want them to follow the Constitution. So what does that mean? It means there is nothing in the Constitution that gives the federal government any role in education whatsoever. And we want the Department of Education abolished. We want the building closed and everyone gone. That's a state's right, and we can handle it just fine. Thank you very much. And we think that we need to have local control of our schools. Because one of the things I've learned as a businessman for 22 years is that no matter which Ivy League school you went to or how brilliant you think you are, it's almost impossible for one group of elites to come up with the right answer to anything. The way it works is that lots of people try lots of different things, and the best answer will rise to the top. And so if we had less national control of our schools, we'd have better education at lower cost. So we want to follow the Constitution. There is no role for the federal government in things like education, the EPA, or any of those things. The federal government was set up to be an arbitrator between the states. States were sovereign. They decided things within their borders, and if there was a conflict between states, the federal government would be the referee. That role has been just destroyed in the last 2 years, because the whole concept of being a referee, which means you both have an equal chance, how does that work when we start owning car companies? How does that work when you own car companies, and then I'm watching my TV and I see the executives from Toyota sitting in front of the Senate, which owns GM and Chrysler, questioning them about their supposed brake problem? There's a conflict of interest in it. That's why you don't want business to own companies. That's not their job. It's wrong. It's illegal. Sorry, Chris? Right, for the government to own companies. So we want the government to get out of the way of business. This concept that business is bad and all businessmen are greedy is just flawed. It's just not true. We know that we became the country we became because we had the ability to take risks and to try different things and to succeed in this world and to bring good to people that they would pay for. There's nothing bad about that. But by our government policies today, you could never tell that. So what needs to be done? We need to show up and participate at all levels. And we'll talk more about that. We need to own our government and hold it accountable. In our brochure, which you should have gotten a copy of our trifold brochure, you will read, it's on the table there if you didn't get one, you will read what we're about. And what we talk about in our brochure is the Portage County Tea Party is an organization that believes it is the responsibility of all citizens to actively participate in government at all levels as required by the Ohio and federal constitutions. To actively participate means more than just voting on election day. That's what we've been taught. That's what they want us to do. Vote for me and then don't talk to me for 4 years. Okay, that'd be like me hiring someone to run my company and never talking to them for 4 years. I think that'd be a bad idea. Okay, so actively participating means attending any government meeting in one's area, including but not limited to meetings such as school boards, township trustees, zoning commission, city council, county commissioners, etc. That's what we mean by actively participating. And why? Because it's our government. We own it. And so by owning it, you need to take responsibility for it. You can't just elect someone and say, just go off and do what you want to do. You have to be engaged in the issues. What I hear from elected officials since we started this organization is the problem for them is when they go to fight for the cause we want to fight, regardless of what it is, when they go and they want to fight the fight, we're not there to back them up. We're not there to back them up. They turn around and there's nobody behind them. You can't do that. So when you ask a Todd McKinney or Tommy Joe Marsilio sitting back there who are running for office, and you're saying, we have a problem. We have a problem in county government with this. Will you please look into it? Well, when they have a county council meeting, you need to go there and support them. You need to hold your government accountable. So therefore, we need to educate our citizens about their role in government. We think that our lack of knowledge of how government works was intentionally inflicted upon us so that we would not interfere with the governing class. In the 14 months that we've been going, or 15 months we've been going, thanks mostly to Glenn Beck, and I know he's a polarizing figure, but we owe the man a debt for what he's done, because he's caused us, and unlike what the media wants to tell you, that Glenn Beck speaks and we all just go like lemmings over the cliff, nothing can be further from the truth. When Glenn Beck speaks, we go and we buy the book and we read it cover to cover and we make our own decisions. I read the 900 pages of the Patriot's Guide to American History. All right? It took me 3 weeks, but I read all 900 pages. I mean, that's the point. We need to become educated citizens for us to know what our role in government is. And so that's what the Tea Party is about. What is our plan for governing? Because that's what you'll hear next. You'll hear, they don't like anything and they want to throw the bums out, but they have no plan. They have no plan for governing. Well, I'm not Einstein, and I'm obviously not as bright as some of these Ivy League people, but in about 15 minutes, I sat down and made this list, and I think it's a pretty good list. We want to elect citizen representatives, not career politicians. No one should be in the Senate for 50 years. No one. That's called political elitism. That is not what the Constitution was about. We want to enact term limits on all offices. On all offices. And they need to be reasonable. You can't just have someone who's good go in for one term and leave. It takes time to do some of this work. But we believe we need term limits. We want to restrict spending to required services. The government was designed to provide basic, necessary services. Roads, safety, fire, police. All the rest is a wish list. The government's job is not to provide whatever you happen to want. And we want them to stick to the Constitution. We want a balanced budget amendment. What a concept, huh? Balanced budget amendment. Thank goodness we have a balanced budget amendment in our states, except there's actually one state that doesn't. If we had it in the federal government, we'd be a lot better off. We want to make sure that the feds can only borrow money in times of war. We think there's no reason to borrow money unless it's a critical situation. We want to return power to the states. I've already talked about that. We want to repeal things like tenure laws and regulate unions. We're not anti-union. We know that unions play a vital role in our society. But their role has become detached from what the benefits are for their workers versus the agenda that their union leadership is trying to impose upon the American citizens. And we are very concerned about that. So finally, what are the goals of the Portage County Tea Party? What do we intend to do? Well, as we said, we need to participate. So one of our goals is that by next year, there will be no meeting held within Portage County without our presence. Any meeting, I don't care if it's the EPA, I don't care who it is. The Portage County Tea Party will have representatives at that meeting. We will report what happens at that meeting on our website, and we'll educate our citizens about what's going on and why they were at that meeting. I have seen dozens of minutes of meetings, of so-called public hearings, where there is one citizen who really isn't a citizen at all and 35 bureaucrats having a meeting about water, storm sewers, things of that nature. That's got to stop. We are going to out-organize, out-fundraise, outwork both parties. That is our goal. Our problem is that they can act with impunity. In Portage County for 50 years, the Democratic Party could do whatever it wanted. They can put anybody up and they can elect them because it's all about money. And no single individual could fight, quote unquote, the party machine. What we have found is by banding together as citizens, the only way to keep them in check is to be able to beat them. And that means more money, more signs, more organization, more training. So we are going to recruit, train, and elect citizen representatives for every office in Portage County. We are already working. We have members already working in our 18 committees. We have almost 90 people on committees in our organization. We are already making a list of every school board seat that's open next year, every trustee seat that's open next year, every city council seat, any government seat that's up next year. We are already investigating that. We are going to recruit people. We are going to have seminars that will train you how to be on a school board, how to be a trustee. We're going to videotape those and make this available on our website. We're going to raise money for those individuals. We're going to put up signs. We're going to go door to door, and we're going to elect citizen representatives. The days of the school board having former teachers, former administrators, or people whose daughters are teachers on the school board must come to an end. It must come to an end. The days of having people in the zoning commission who happen to want the zoning laws changed for their own personal good must come to an end. And so someone brought this to me as a metaphor, and I think it's very appropriate. In a lot of ways, I think the Tea Party will become the lobbyist for the common citizen. If you think about Todd winning in the Ohio House, when he's elected, there will be groups that will come to him. The Farm Bureau, environmental groups, manufacturing groups, all kinds of people will come to Todd with their agenda. And he will have to listen to them because they're citizens, and that's his job. But what's weird about that is, think about it. Even though he's elected by us to represent us, if every day you're meeting with people saying, we need this, we need this, we need this, for their own special interest, can you see how easy it would be for the citizens' interest to get lost? Do you see how that would happen? It's just psychological. I do not believe there are bad people. I believe there are bad systems that put people in bad positions. So the difference is going to be that after the Farm Bureau or the Manufacturing Association or some other group comes in to see Todd, the Tea Party's going to come and see Todd. And we're going to say, Todd, what's the manufacturing guy saying? What's the Farm Bureau saying? We'll get back to you, we'll talk to our members, and we'll let you know what the people think. I think it's a wonderful thought. And I think Todd would appreciate it when that happens. Because then he'll know that we own our government and we're engaged and we're taking responsibility for our government. So that is what the Tea Party is all about. Are there any questions? Makes sense. Do we look like racist, bigot, Nazi, homophobe, Islamophobe radicals?
Deserves an applause.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so now on to the good stuff. We're here at this meeting. Why did we invite you to attend? In reading American history, it is clear that the church, that religion, that pastors played a fundamental role. Critical role. Probably the most critical role. It is clear to us when we read the Constitution, it is plain as day that all men are created equal and that their rights are given not by government, but by God. By God. That's what makes it special. That's why people in Washington can't give us our rights. They don't have them to give. We have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is a God-given right to every person ever born on this earth. But as the patriots like Franklin and Jefferson and Madison and Washington said, you've got to defend that right. It's not just going to stay there. There's people who want to take it away. Power. They want power over you. And we must defend our freedoms. We must defend our God-given right. But as we look as citizens organizing and educating about governance, we understand that there's a role, as I said, free enterprise and capitalism. I made a call this morning to every single business in Portage County. 5,745 businesses in Portage County. Got a phone call from me today demanding that they defend capitalism because they're business owners. And if you will not defend capitalism, who will? So when the President of the United States comes on your TV and knowingly lies to the American people and says that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is taking foreign money to try to control the outcome of this election, you need to stand up and say that's a lie. It is a lie. And when you see the DNC commercial that shows businessmen paying off politicians to get their way, stand up. That's a lie. Most businesses have never paid a bribe to anyone who never would, and if they did, it should go to jail. But that's the image that's being planted. So that's part of the coalition. Here's the Tea Party. We're our citizens. Here's business, free enterprise and capital. But over here is you. Over here on the right flank are the pastors and the religious people who understand the values that we profess. It is written by our founding fathers that you cannot have a functioning democracy without values, without morals. It will not work. It is contingent upon character. And I am so upset when I talk to people in politics who say things like, well, what President Obama said is just politics. It's not just politics. It's just an outright lie. And that's not politics. And they do it on both sides. People in politics pretend that this is fantasy football, for goodness sake. They really do. They think it's fun that someone charges John Ganley with sexual harassment right before the election, or that Meg Whitman suddenly gets charged with hiring an illegal alien, right before the election. What a coincidence, huh? Wow, bet that just happened on its own. That's disgusting. We, the American people, are disgusted by that behavior. It's immoral. It's beneath them. It's beneath leadership. And that's your ballywig. That's your area of expertise, I believe. That's not the Tea Party's area. So, in the sheets I've handed out to you, there's a couple of things I'd like to talk about, and then we would like to have some discussion. Our meeting today is to talk about the role of politics, religion in politics. And the first thing that just shocked me, and it came out of this book, Original Intent. It's written by David Barton, and there's an article from David Barton, and we also handed out. The Courts, the Constitution, and Religion. Very interesting book. And Ann Kazmarek, thank you for lending it to me to read. I really appreciate it. So in these, there's 3 pages here that are written about the concept of separation in church and state. And until I read these, and I just read them the other night, I had no idea where this concept of separation of church and state came from.
It's not in the Constitution.
It sure is not in the Constitution. It is made up. It was made up in 1947 by the Supreme Court. And I think when you read this document, you will be as stunned and surprised as I was. I'm going to read it all to you, but what I want to make you clear on is that the Constitution says, first, that the Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Okay? That's what this Constitution says. Congress, the federal government, shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That is a constitutional restriction upon the federal government. The second part of this separation of church and state, is in the 14th Amendment, and I'm going to get my things together. Okay, let me read this section to you. Since the introduction in 1947 of the Everson Guideline, activities upheld as constitutional in prior years are now regularly prohibited. The Everson decision, however, was distinct not only for its introduction of the modern separation doctrine, but also because it dramatically expanded the role of federal courts. How was this accomplished? In the Everson case in 1947, the court took the 14th Amendment, which dealt with specific state powers, and attached to it the First Amendment federal provision that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. The result of merging these two amendments was twofold. First, the court reversed the bedrock constitutional demand that the First Amendment pertains only to the federal government, not to states and not to individual citizens. Second, the court declared that the federal courts were now empowered to restrict not only the religious activities of the federal government, but those of states and individuals as well. The Constitution does not give the federal government either of those things. It's completely wrong. And when you read the examples that are given in this article, and I'll just read a few of them because they're so outrageous. A verbal prayer offered in the school is unconstitutional, even if that prayer is both voluntary and denominationally neutral. Freedom of speech and press are guaranteed to students and teachers unless the topic is religion, at which time such speech becomes unconstitutional. These are court cases. If it is unconstitutional for students to see the 10 Commandments, since they might read, meditate upon, respect, or obey them, it's unconstitutional for them to see them. If a student prays over his lunch, it is unconstitutional for him to pray out loud. A school song was struck down because it promoted values such as honesty, truth, courage, and faith in the form of a prayer. Interestingly, the song occurred as a part of a voluntary extracurricular student activity. It was prohibited. It is unconstitutional for war memorials to be erected in the shape of a cross. The 10 Commandments, despite the fact that they are based on civil law and are depicted in engraved stone in the U.S. Supreme Court building itself, may not be displayed at public courthouses. When a student addresses an assembly of his peers, he effectively becomes a government representative. It is therefore unconstitutional for the student to engage in prayer. This thing goes on for 2 pages. Okay, Chris?
Yeah, there's something very interesting. That 1947 case was actually brought about between a letter that was sent between John Hancock and Samuel Adams. In the last 10 years of their lives, they sent about 1,000 letters between each other, and one of those letters was talking about church services that were being held in the Capitol. Most of the original founders of this country were ministers, and they had church services in the rotunda of the Capitol all the way up to 1908. And one of those questions that was in that letter was about the Unitarians and the Baptists. And at that point, it was John Hancock who talked about separating the church and the church issues from the state. And there's a difference between the word of and from.
Yes.
Okay? Huge difference. Okay? At no time did our government ever see itself as being separated from religion. They said, every one of them said, and in fact it says that by firm reliance on God, that they pledge their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor. Okay? And so church services were allowed in the U.S. Capitol
Building.
In the Capitol Building up until 1908.
Right.
Okay? So don't tell me that this has to be a question of separation of religion from the state.
No.
Absolutely.
It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist.
Tom, my dad was part of the federal court in Cleveland until he passed in 1960. Every time there was a court session, he stood up and said, "Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?"
So help me God. You bet.
And I remember still vividly that in that day you're talking about in 47, at the dinner table when he went absolutely wild at what was being started then. and the words that he had to say about what was going on, we wouldn't repeat here.
There you go. Well, it's unbelievable because from that point forward, for 50 years, courts have now ruled using something that isn't in the Constitution, that was literally made up. It doesn't exist. And we need to change this. We need to pass laws that straightens this out.
Has anybody ever read something that came out of the Supreme Court? Nowhere in there does it actually talks about unconstitutional. It says in the opinion.
Yeah, in the opinion of the court. And the Congress makes the laws. So you can change, and the Congress makes laws. And we can change laws and say what we want to say.
Unless you're around today, because now the EPA is making policy which is considered law.
Point well taken. Yes.
I'll add one thing. Prayer was taken out of the schools, starting with a school in Baltimore. And we know the Madeline O'Hare story. Our son has been working in the community up there, and before that school closed, he got prayer back into that school with the teachers who prayed. It can be reversed.
It can be done. Well, how many of you have heard about this protest that took place recently where about 100 pastors preached from the pulpit about politics and invited the IRS to sue them? Are you aware of this?
No.
Okay, now there's a sheet that I handed out that has David Barton's picture on it. There's a separate sheet. I don't know if you did get that. But he talks about this because there's a group now that has put up the money to take this to the Supreme Court and fight the fight. Because again, the problem has been, why does the Tea Party have to exist? Because only by being together collectively as citizens can we fight these wrongs. What our government has done is isolated individuals. So you as a pastor, if you didn't think it was right, you would have to stand up by yourself and say, it's not right. And to their credit, in that article, they mentioned a gentleman in Kansas who's a pastor who's done that, who's by himself has taken on the IRS. But you shouldn't have to do that. We should be able to act collectively and bring resources. So they are basically challenging the IRS restrictions on your free speech, and they're going to take it to the Supreme Court because we believe it's unconstitutional. Okay? Now, having said that, I've handed out a document to you that starts out with jeopardizing tax-exempt status. This is a document that I think you'll find very valuable. I thought it was really well done. And by goodness gracious, it's written by the IRS. It's the best thing I've ever seen written by the IRS. Okay? And it comes from, our lawyers sent it to us. It's on the website. And there's a PDF. It's called Tax Guide for Churches and Religious Organizations. It's about 42 pages. But what I loved about this, I'd like you to turn to page 7. Because I don't think a lot of you are involved in lobbying and things like that, but it does cover that, and the document covers a lot. But this section on page 7 starts to cover political campaign activity. And what I loved about this document is they write these little scenarios. And so as you're reading it, you're kind of thinking, well, is this legal or isn't it legal? And I was surprised, and I kind of use it as a quiz for people in our office. And I'd start to read it and I'd say, now what do you think? Is that legal or illegal? And they were only right about 50% of the time. And so my question is going to be, how right will you be when you read this? Now we're not going to go through all of them, but let's start with a couple on this first page 7. Example 1, Minister A is the minister of Church J, a Section 501c3 organization, and is well known in the community. With their permission, candidate T publishes a full-page ad in the local newspaper listing 5 prominent ministers who have personally endorsed candidate T, including Minister A from Church J. Minister A is identified in the ad as minister of Church J. So it's got your name and your church, and it's in the ad, and the ad's running in a local paper. The ad states, titles and affiliations of each individual are provided for identification purposes only. The fine print across the bottom. The ad is paid for by candidate T's campaigns committee. Since the ad was not paid for by Church J, the ad is not otherwise an official publication of Church J, and the endorsement is made by Minister A in a personal capacity, and the ad does not constitute political campaign intervention by church. Now that surprised me, because I put your name up there and I put your church up there, everyone in your church is going to read it, and they're going to know who you are, and they're going to be influenced by that ad. They're going to be influenced by the fact that it says vote for Tommy Joe or vote for Todd McKinney. Okay? But it says it's legal. Show of hands. How many of you thought that was legal? 1, 2. 2. Okay? So I'm trying to arm you with some things because you have more rights than you think you have. Let's do the second example. Minister B is the minister of Church K. A 501c3 organization is well known in the community. 3 weeks before the election, he attends a press conference at a candidate V's campaign headquarters and states that candidate V should be re-elected. Minister B does not say he speaks on behalf of Church K. His endorsement is reported on the front page of the local newspaper, and he is identified in the article as minister of Church K. Because Minister B did not make the endorsement as an official church at an official church function, in an official church publication, or otherwise use the church's assets, it did not state that he was speaking as a representative of Church K. His actions do not constitute political campaign intervention. I think it's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. So you can be at a press conference, okay, and you can say, I think Todd McKinney is a great candidate, and I'm going to vote for him. And it can say, Tom Zawistowski, pastor of First Christ Church. And that's legal. I didn't know that. I don't know how many pastors knew that. So this entire document is chock full of these Q&As. And I encourage you to go to the IRS website and look for Church's Guide, the tax guide for churches and religious organizations, download it to your computer, and I think this would be a great document for you to have a study session with your congregational members so they can understand what's right and what's wrong. There are things you cannot do. And it goes on, I think the third example, they gave us 2 softballs or 2 that you can do. The third one says, Minister C is the minister of Church I, a 501c3 organization. Church I publishes a monthly church newsletter that is distributed to all church members. In each issue, Minister C has a column titled My Views. This month before the election, Minister C states in the My Views column, it is my personal opinion that candidate U should be re-elected. For that one issue, Minister C pays from his personal funds the portion of the cost of the newsletter attributed to his My Views column. So he writes it, he pays for it, he says it's in my opinion that this candidate should be re-elected. Even though he paid for part of the cost of the newsletter is an official publication of the church. Because the endorsement appeared on an official publication of the church, it constitutes political intervention. You can't do it. You can't do that. Okay? Very, very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. So I'm hopeful that this document will be of value to you and will be a guide to you. Because I think it gives you more leeway than you think you have. On the back of the agenda sheet, you'll see a little poll that was done on a website that was talking about this case about whether they're going to take it to the Supreme Court or not. And the question asks, how often does your pastor address political hot button issues and challenge you to live out your faith through your vote? And it says, very regularly, 19.56%. From time to time, 37.92%. Only during election season, 5.05%. Never, 37.47%. Now, I don't know if this is representative at all, but I thought it would be data that would be valuable to you simply because it was a decent number of people that voted, and it gave you a pretty wide range. Okay? So, it's time for me to stop talking and to let the discussion begin. For us to meet our goals, for the Tea Party mission to be fulfilled, we need citizen participation in education. And from our viewpoint, that means you being able to talk to your congregation about their responsibility as citizens, their responsibility to own government and to be engaged in it. That we think it means that your job is to make them understand that not only do they need to vote, okay, and I'll give you the statistic for this election. The Board of Elections is predicting a 31% turnout this election. 31% turnout. Millions of men and women have died so we could vote. And we won't even mail it in, let alone get off the couch and come vote. I'm not a pastor, but I would call that a sin. To me, that's a sin. It's wrong. But that's a message I can't send, you must send. And then the second part of it is, that's not enough. That's not enough. Voting is not enough. And I've used this example in my presentations. That to me, going to the school board meeting, going to the township meeting, going to the zoning meeting is exactly like going to church. If you love your God, you will go to church and you will praise Him, and you will show that love and affection. If you love your country, does it deserve no less? Is it not your responsibility to be there, to be the adults, to be the ones who protect our Constitution and our government? I think it is. But it's not for me to say. It's up to you to decide what role your members of your congregation play and what your duty is. So now, I'd like to hear, what do you think it is? What do you think you should be doing? What are you afraid of? What can we do together? What can we do to help you? Because that's what we want. We want a strong nation. We want the strongest nation possible. And we know we can't have that without values, without character, without people who know right from wrong and will do the right. Norms and sanctions, is what I was taught in ethics class, is what makes a society. We don't have a society because we don't have any norms and we don't have any sanctions. It depends on who you know. That's wrong. We need to say, this is right, that's wrong, and if you do wrong, this is the penalty. We have a lot to do, don't we? We have a lot to do. So, comments? Anybody? Yes?
It just seems like in the churches, because there's people that have differing opinions, I don't think it's so much about what's legal as, there's a lot of pastors here, but I think that it's about that the pastor does not want to step on anybody's toes or make somebody upset because they feel a certain way. And so, even though it's legal, how do you solve that problem? Because it's like they feel like they need to be neutral, and yet they might be very passionate.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the answer. The answer is that we want them to be passionate about governance, and that it's not Republican or Democrat, as we say in the Tea Party. We're about America, not about parties, even though they want to make us a party. We're not a party. People say to us, are you going to form your own party? I mean, I'm sure you've heard that. Is the Tea Party going to form their own party? That's the last thing we want to do. You know what my answer to that is? Why should we start another party? We already have two. So what are we doing? We're getting our members to run for Central Committee on the Democratic and Republican parties. Because that's who elects, that decides who's on the ballot for the Democrats and Republicans. And we never knew this. I had no idea about that. If you go to our website and look at our videos, you'll see a video that talks about Central Committees. And so we don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat, an Independent or a Green Party. You still got to be sitting there at the school board meeting. You still got to be sitting there even if you don't have children in school. You still got to be sitting at the zoning commission even if your property's not being zoned, because it's your civic responsibility. I think that message applies to everyone. And I don't think it has to be polarizing. The Tea Party, and I'll make this difference for you. And I probably should have said this earlier. There's the Tea Party movement and there's the 9/12 groups. Now there's also immigration groups and other religious groups, abortion rights groups and things like that. The Tea Party is focused on what we call fiscal conservative values. We're about governance, controlling spending and things like that. The 9/12 groups, which Glenn Beck started, are much more about social values. And those are a lot more personal and a lot more difficult to handle. We think if we can get our financial house in order, that a lot of the social things will take care of themselves. If we can bring back states' rights, that we can solve some of these social issues. But until we do, we can't. So that's kind of how we've handled not polarizing it, by staying, everybody knows we want to pay less taxes. We can all agree on that. Everybody agrees we want our money spent wisely. So we try to stay away from that. Does that help to answer that question?
Yeah, it does, but I'm just thinking of some of the comments you made, the little things you just read, you know, that's endorsing one candidate or whatever.
Right. Yeah, and again, I call that courage. I call that leadership. I call that, at some point, we've been challenged in this 15 months because we started out, we're all just a bunch of citizens, and believe me, you've never seen more of an amateur hour in your life, okay? I mean, you talk about people don't know what they're doing. I mean, we had our first protest out here. We didn't know what to do. Like, what do you do at a protest? No one in our group had ever protested anything in their lives before. Okay, I mean, we didn't know how to make signs. Like they have all those fancy, sayings. People Bush lied and people died and all that stuff. We didn't have any sayings. We don't know what to do. So what happened is, as we got through the process, we, the Tea Party, decided that we weren't going to be passive. We did not want to be the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters does a great job. Okay, they list where they go to high school, where they go to college. What do you feel about this? We believe that as Americans, we needed to be active, that we need to take responsibility. So we created a PAC. We are one of the few Tea Parties in the United States that has a political action committee. And our political action committee allows us to endorse a slate of candidates. And we had really hard choices. Really hard choices. Bing Henderson was running against Jim Graham. We love Bing Henderson. We love him. We supported them both in the primaries, but then in the general, Jim Graham won it and we're behind him. We have a race in the northern part of the county between Daniel Cartwright, Kathleen Clyde, and Roque Zeller. And we love Daniel Cartwright, who's an independent, but we didn't think he could win. And we were following the philosophy of vote for the most conservative person who can win. So we're backing Roque Zeller. It's been hurtful because I had to see Daniel Cartwright and shake his hand and look into his eyes and know he's sincere and he's equally as qualified. He's a good candidate. But we had to make a decision. And that's what leadership's about. Okay? So I think you need to think about what your leadership is about. And you need to talk to your congregation about, I'm going to say what I believe. You don't have to follow that. But as a leader, I think you need to know where I stand.
Tom, I think there's an easy way to get around this thing about, I personally belong to a church that's very, very polarizing. I have one lady in the church who's been best friends with my wife for a long time. And she called me up one day and she said, I won't go to lunch with you because I'm afraid that somebody in church might see us at lunch and think something's going on. That's insanity, okay? But the way you get around her question, in my opinion, was addressed on the Glenn Beck show yesterday by Andrew Napolitano. He said, I don't believe that we're in a two-party country anymore. He says, I think we're in a big government country, one party, okay? And there's a Republican wing and a Democratic wing, and they're fighting over each other who can make a bigger government, okay? If that's the case, and I think that he's pretty accurate about that, then we need to take a look and boil it down to what it really is all about. Are we more interested in doing social issues that cost us a lot of money? Or are we interested in having people accept responsibility for their own lives? Are we interested in reducing the cost of the debt? Are we interested in cutting down spending and borrowing? Okay. Now, boil it down to those issues, then each person in that congregation can decide who they're going to vote for based on the candidate's stand on those issues. Okay?
Yep.
You don't have to actually come up with a name.
Right. Good. Bob.
Yeah, probably two items. First of all, towards the difference between Tea Parties and 912s and the groups that would be represented in the 912. Tea Party movement, from my perspective, is opening up government so that people can participate. It's really encouraging people and opening up those venues. And one of the ways in which this is done is through addressing physical issues. All right. Once people are starting to participate, then they can bring in their other issues, whether it be school prayer, whether it be anything else that applies to the local community and the way people choose to live. All right, so that's one item. And if the Tea Party were all of a sudden to start to address all of the social issues, you would first have to take a vote within the Tea Party. It would just be chaotic.
We'd be the libertarians.
Yeah.
We'd be the Libertarian Party, is what we'd be.
It would just get crazy.
Right.
And so let's open up the government by having everyone participate. That's number one. Number two, from a spiritual perspective, go to Ezekiel 34 and read about what the Lord would say about the role of a shepherd. And each of the pastors here are a shepherd, and many of the rest of us are shepherds because we've been called to certain ministries. And I just recommend it as
That's good.
just great meditation.
Excellent, excellent. Yes.
Well, I think there's still that lie of separation of church and state within the church. And so when people go to church, they go to worship. And they think that the government issue should stay out of church because they've chosen to believe that lie.
Right.
They've been taught it for years. So, the scripture's really clear that we are to be praying for our government and be praying for good government in order for the gospel to continue to go out. So when you look at your congregation, you don't want to look at them as, well, he thinks this way and they think this way, and that's a social issue. It's not about your pocketbook. It is about what is the word of the Lord saying. There are very, very definite moral issues. And when you go to the ballot, I don't know how you could, at a voting booth, vote one way, totally opposite of what you say that you believe and worship on Sunday. So to me, it's you can't compartmentalize that. And we tend to do that in our society.
Right.
And I just don't think you can do it.
Well, I think that you raise a good point because, again, you're talking about education. You're talking about bringing a lot. How many of you are familiar with the book, The 5,000-Year Leap? I was looking for my copy. Some of you have read it. You need to write that down. 5,000-Year Leap. 5,000-Year Leap. It's an old book that Glenn Beck dredged up that said more to me about the role of religion in the founding of our country than any book I've read. And it'd be a great book for a study group within a congregation to look at because it addresses those issues. It's not about who you're going to vote for or their politics. It's about what is the role of religion in governance. And it's an important role. And I think that's a book you should look into, The 5,000-Year Leap. It's available on Amazon, all that. It's a paperback. It's really not very expensive. But you're right. There is this separation of church and state in the secular world is this club they're beating us with through the legal system. But it's also in the religious world that says there's separation of church and state. No, there's not. Can I copy this book and read it? There's not. You have the right to be involved. You have a right to practice your religion regardless. And again, it's misinformation, and we need to fight that. Who's next? Yes?
There's a scripture which is, I've heard misused in conversations like this. Give unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, and give unto God what is God, and that is spoken by some as a reason for separation. However, people fail to realize that that was all on one coin, and we have a responsibility to do both.
That's a good point. Excellent point. Excellent point. Yes?
One of the things that, as I've been sitting here listening, and I look around the room, one of the things that has really touched my heart specifically is how we, as a society in an educational role, are training up our young people in regards to our country. I have 4 grandsons. The 14, 16, and 18-year-olds absolutely hate civics, which is a basic course that explains our educational role. These are our future leaders, our future voters, and yet we have, as a society, made our government, even within the classroom,
No, I agree.
very indefensible educational tool.
And that's really this whole problem of control. Whether it's the healthcare bill, or it's the teachers' unions, or it's just the unions in general trying to force companies to act in ways that are unnatural in the free market world. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting for individual liberty and freedom. And it's kind of one of these slippery slope things that if you lose it here, you start to lose it there, you start to lose it everywhere. And we're about to lose it all. Okay? So, it's time for us to stand up and say, no, this shall not pass. This will not stand. And quite frankly, they have never seen this in their lifetimes. It's shocking to them. That's why they were so aggressive against us initially, because it was so standoffish to them that how dare Bill Thomas challenge what I said? How dare a mere citizen come to a town meeting and question this? Okay? And then when it started to be not just Bill Thomas, but millions of people outside the Capitol building, and saying, we demand that you listen to us, it starts to have an effect. It's our country. Nothing that they have built cannot be changed by us. We own this country. It is us. The Constitution clearly says that if our government stops to serve us, it may be abolished and reconstituted in a form that will do it. Well, you know what? That's where we're headed. The Tea Party, we are not interested in compromise. We are not interested in, we're going to vote you in November and then we're going to go away. This is how I tell people. To me, what we've experienced in the last 15 months is like witnessing an airplane crash. Could you imagine witnessing a jetliner crashing in front of your face, blowing up, burning? The horror of that, you would never forget it till the day you die. What I have seen in the last 15 months, I will never forget till the day I die. None of the people in our group will forget what we have seen. We have seen that we've been living a lie. That nothing we thought was true is true. That the parties aren't what we thought they were. The people in government aren't who we thought they were. The laws aren't what we thought they were. It's a mess. And so we're ready to fight that fight until it is won. And I call it our Pearl Harbor. Really, 2009 was Pearl Harbor, where we didn't want to go fight in World War II. The Americans want to mind their own businesses, run their business, raise their family, go to church, be citizens. But they bombed Pearl Harbor, and we were ready. We got to our guns, we got ready, organized, we manufactured, and we beat them every which way you can. We fought all over this world. We have had our Pearl Harbor politically, and we are going to fight until the battle is won, regardless of how they say it can't be won or it's impossible. Nothing's impossible to Americans, to free-thinking Americans. Beth?
Well, I look at one point of view that as ministers and people who are responsible for your Bible studies, there's so much in the Bible that says the stories about the Pharaoh and how they gathered the crops up to just equally distribute them, and what happened to the people, how they became the same as we are becoming now, a nanny state. Okay, so because they were starving, they ended up starving because they weren't working. It's the same thing when our colonies were formed. They had a socialist form of government, and they distribute the wealth. Well, the people that were working hard saw the people that weren't working hard and said, why should I work so hard? So I think it's establishing the moral values of being a hard worker, the moral values of taking care of your own and those around you, and the moral values of not letting the government interfere with what is your personal responsibility. And again, you go to your church, you go to your community, but what we've got is them trying to make us, the federal government, as mommy. And that's got to stop. And you have the opportunity to stand up and tell those stories and relate those stories so that your youth in your churches can say, well, I'm not going to let this happen to me. I understand now what they're doing.
She's not wrong, but I think this lady here, I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, I think she was even more correct, because it's a question of fear within the church community, okay? And somehow you got to break down that fear, and I think that's what we as a group here need to find a way to break down that fear, and at least get some ideas about it, and then take that back out into the community. See, because I believe that in order for anything to work, it has to go from what those of us in AA call the difference between intellectual and experiential, and that 18-inch difference between my head and my heart is the difference between life and death for us. Okay, so we need to take that. We need to take that information that we're trying to talk about and about owning our government and being a servant to our church communities, and we need to take it from the intellectual to the to the experiential. We need to get it somehow down in our heart. That's where it needs to be, and that's the fear we need to break down, and that's what we need to start in this room today. And it's not a national level; it's a local level. Today.
Oh, it is.
So right here in this
Right?
room.
Yeah. It's a micro local level. Hi, Jane.
I guess my heart says, first it's Jesus. And if you decided to be a pastor or a shepherd of your flock, you need to get on your knees and pray to God to give you the boldness to say what is necessary to say. You don't have to say you're for a party, you're for this, but the Bible says, as you have brought forth, it is our job and our duty to vote. We are taught truth. And I'm a little bit ignorant, so I will have to say that,
Okay.
And I have tried to go to the school board meeting. I went, one time. But when I have a conflict that goes against our belief, I do go to the schools and I talk to them, but they all want to pass their buck. And when I went to the one school board meeting because I wasn't getting anywhere else, I was told it was the wrong place to bring it up, which I don't believe.
Right.
I mean, it's a community thing. I mean, I've never been involved with my community except for now that I have children.
Right.
And I don't know anything about this except for today where I came, and I think it's great. And I would like to know, how would you help back, let's just say me, going to the schools, because my daughters do go to the schools and they pray at their lunch and they're bullied a ton. And how would the Tea Party help somebody who's trying to get prayer into the school, go to the school board meetings, and I mean, we're looking at doing what's right. Not because my kid's sitting on a bench all the time, but the different, the politics that are in there. I mean, am I making,
Oh, yeah.
is this part of
This is a common problem. When you talk to members of our group, you will hear numerous individuals speak about similar experiences. They went to the Kent City Council meeting, they felt they had a grievance that was legitimate, and they were so intimidated. They treated them like, okay, next question, please, and you just feel helpless. That's why we need to organize. That's why you can't go by yourself. You need to go with others in your church or in your community. That's why we're organizing. Our goal is to focus the resources on the questions that really need to be solved, because that's the bullying that government and power can achieve over the individual. And we see this constantly. And I think we have to band together so you are not alone.
Yeah,
Todd.
The person you take is more diplomatic than me.
Yes, more diplomatic. Todd.
On the specific religious issues, I can give you some websites and some resources that you can be prepared when you go in to talk about the specific issues of praying in school, because you're right, you should do it, and you are legally, you can do that. I think one of the things the pastors have attention about is their calling is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the difficulty is the Bible, a lot of it written in the New Testament deals with the Roman government and dealing with a crazy emperor most of the time. So they're under persecution. We've got an entirely different situation where we can have influence and speak to the government. And I think that our responsibility is a lot different. We have a responsibility to be educated, not just to vote, but to actually consider and vote. And it's hard work. It's a lot harder and a lot more complex than we want to admit and that we want to say it, but it is. It's work. And I think that's part of what we preach. The thing I probably struggle with as a pastor the most is I was really gripped by the passages that said we must be good to the poor. But when I saw most programs being good to the poor, I saw people being enabled and becoming dependent on government. And that, because the Bible also says if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. And so you wrestle as pastors, I think, with those twin things. And what you end up looking for are ministries that are really healthy, like the Salvation Army, like the Haven of Rest, places where there's accountability, where we are good to the poor, but there's accountability so they're not crippled and they become more independent. And I think what you said about the nature of preaching on the moral issues of lying and that being wrong and calling people out for that is straight down the center of what churches can and should do. And an interaction between these groups, I think, is just healthy because it gets you thinking about it.
I think that's true. I mean, I think a lot of it is, as you've been here today, you start to think about some things you never thought about. You know, this IRS document helps you think about some things a different way. This book does. And I think we need to re-engage in this discussion. We need to understand that in the list of priorities, this has got to move up a few notches because we've kind of let it slide. And it's crippling our nation. It's crippling our nation.
There's a statement that we have learned, and it's called the sin of kindness. And we have to learn, like you said, there's other people that can make people more accountable, and we need to watch our spending, you know, individually, and we need to watch and look for that. Are we enabling by being kind?
Right.
So it's the sin of kindness. And that's a terrible thing to look at, but it's true.
Janine.
One thing though, when you were saying when you would go to the board, I think we need to do it is we don't go to the board only when we have a problem. We need to be there every meeting. It's almost like, you know, they will see us and know us. And then when we come with a problem, then sometimes it's more accepted because you're there all the time. You know, you have a voice, you have a presence, and, you know, it's almost like that one saying, you know, when they know you're a Christian or they know you have your beliefs, and in the morning the devil says, oh my gosh, she's up. You know, if you want to do that, you want to say, oh my gosh, they're here. And it makes them accountable in those meetings, and they know what they're saying is going to get back to others. It's not the hush meeting, or it's not the side meeting, or the secret meeting. It's going to be a meeting that everybody's going to know what you're voting on, and everybody's going to know what you said. And I think that's what we need to do. That's the accountability that I think we're talking about.
Yes, Neil.
Tom, there's an underlying fear here, been brought up in a number of different ways. I don't want to be rejected, whether it's with a congregation or with any other group. I don't want to lose my platform to do what I'm called to do. This fear of being politically correct is another way of stating it. But then there's a scripture. Politically correct means being neutral. And in the scriptures it says, if you are neutral as in tepid water, God will spit you out. So you better be hot or cold.
Interesting. How about, to address that, do you think that we should organize this group, you know, as a quarterly meeting type thing, or sooner, or annual meeting, where we can help with the rejection by having you a place where you can come to gather strength, where you can share experiences and stories, where you can, you know, bring up specific examples of things that happened in your parish that you may not have acted the way you wanted to, but you would like some advice.
Tell the rest of the clergy who's on your list what this meeting has accomplished, and let it be a witness to them, and call them back into a quarterly meeting, and let that process continue and grow until we overflow the room.
Keep building on top of it. We definitely intend to do that. We will notify everyone who is not here when we have the video. We'll put it up on our website, and we'll ask them to go and watch it, and so they can see what we talked about and feel. And then we'll have another meeting. What other fears do you have? What else can we do to help?
I think that people just don't think that it'll make any difference if they do something. And I think that that's a lot of the reason that people don't get involved.
I agree.
Actually, they've tried maybe, or maybe they haven't tried. It's a lot of work to go against what you feel like doing. You have to put yourself out on a line. You have to, set yourself up to be rejected or considered stupid. And it's like if there's any time that the people in the country are coming together and saying, uh-oh, it's now. And so it seems like there should be I forget what it's called, Portage County Tea Party. You can make a difference.
Right.
Something, because we can make a difference, but if you don't think you can, you won't start.
Right.
You don't have any hope. Just give up before you even start.
Well, I mean, you touch upon a very important point. You know, we know more than anyone because we've been demonized since we instituted our organization. We've had to fight against a lot of public pressure, and we understand that we need to win. We need to show people that something gets done, something gets changed. So this particular election is critical for us. So that's one of the things that I need to leave you with, is that I need you now. I need you now. I need you in 3 weeks. I need your members to vote. We need them now. We don't have time to wait.
There's a couple of statistics that I think we need to talk about here because it will point out why this is important. In the last primary, the total overall voting was about 28% of all the registered voters in Portage County. 22.5% of the Democrats went to the poll, and 74.5% of the Republicans and Independents went to the poll. They don't expect it to be much different this time. Maybe 29% on the Democratic side, maybe 73 or 74% on the Republican and the Independent side. And that was all well and good, but here's the thing that we found out yesterday. I went to a meeting yesterday morning in Chagrin Falls, and I was talking with a person who was a member of the Jaga County Republican Party, and they've been watching us, right? They said that the work that the Portage County Tea Party has done allowed better than 50% of the people who are currently on the ballot for the general election to be on that ballot. Without the Tea Party, they would not have been. And based on our work, they estimate that there's a 90% chance that every single person that has been endorsed by the Tea Party will win, based on what we've done. So
That's true.
that can get carried over into businesses, into churches, into other organizations, women's organizations, out of the golf course, whatever it is. Because we need to take it, we literally need to take it from a Democrat and Republican issue down to an issue, okay? What is it that we really want our government to do? What are we going to do about the spending? What are we going to do about the deficit? What are we going to do about all the social issues, which you're correct, and probably a lot of them will take care of themselves once the money issues are taken care of. But we have to understand what the issues are, okay, in order for us to talk about them, and then we need to do something about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the bottom line. It needs to be something that has positive rewards. We've done some things, for instance, part of that is structural. For instance, when we did the Patriot Walk, you'll see some people wearing their t-shirts and things for the Patriot Walk. You know, we were told that we'd never get people to go door to door. We were flat out told. I was told flat out, you'll never get 50 people. These are probably people in politics their whole lives. People will talk, people will complain, people will come to your meetings, but when you want them to do something, they won't do it. We had 360 people go walk in Portage County in one day. We delivered almost 10% of all the houses, we did over 10% of all the houses in Portage County in 1 3-hour period. What we did though, is we gave them t-shirts, we had them walk together in teams so they could feed off each other. We trained them so they could have a positive experience when they went door to door. We did a little movie, which I could show you. It's only 5 minutes. It's a very cute movie about going door to door and what not to do and what to do, and if someone's angry, how to handle that. And what we came back with, our teams came up with a brilliant idea of having a luncheon after the first time they went out, where we had Pizza Hut donated pizza, and we were at Maplewood Cafeteria at Career Center, and we had all these people all in their shirts just jabbering about the experience they had. And I met all 217 teams as they came in the door. And I said, well, you don't look like you were shot or no dog bit you or anything. You look okay. How did it go? And they didn't say, well, I got through it or it was tough. They said, oh man, what a great time I had. This one guy, I was telling him, and this lady, she couldn't wait to see us, and I got a hug from this person, and this was the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. Literally, because part of leadership is empowering your flock, giving them something meaningful to do. Okay, reaching out and saying each one of you can contribute. Whether you put up a sign, make a phone call, write a letter. And so we created those tools that built up this positive experience. And we are having an insanely positive experience. I mean, it's a little frightening to me because so few people are treating us poor. We have people who are now, we're coming to the door, they're saying, I've been waiting for you. Where have you been? We're working as 45,000 houses. It takes a while, you know. But literally, we've had that experience. We think that's going to turn into votes. We also think, and it was eye-opening, we were out in our neighborhoods. People, you know, the problem in our culture today, and I'm not telling you don't know, is we don't know our neighbors. The sense of community has been destroyed by the internet and TV and all these other things, and the movement of our people from place to place. You know, maybe the poor economy has been a blessing because people stayed there long enough for you to get to know them. Okay, but what's cool about this is we went out and we started to meet our neighbors, and you know what? Instead of the TV station sewing some Nazi T-shirt and saying all these Tea Party people are Nazis, they saw someone wearing a Tea Party T-shirt who looked totally normal, who looked like their mom or their dad or their brother or their uncle. And it destroyed that stereotype. Destroyed it. And they won't believe anything they read in the paper about us anymore because they met us. So there are ways to do that. But I understand we must achieve. We cannot, as I've said to our people, there is no room here for moral victories. I'm not interested. My background is coaching and football, and there's wins and losses, and that's it. Okay? I intend to win, and we intend to take back our country. Okay? So that's the way we're going to lead, and they'll follow. Janine.
One more thing. If Portage County hasn't learned anything in the last election, what did we have? 2 tied elections that we had it by coin flips. We had 1 or 2 elections that were won by 1 vote. If we don't let the people know that their 1 vote matters, then, you know, we're not doing our job. Your 1 vote is what matters, and we have to let everybody know that they are important and their vote matters.
Are you happy you came today?
Yes.
Was it valuable to you? Do you think the information we've shared will be valuable to your peers? I mean, do you think this is good stuff? I can take this PDF and put it on the website. I can put this video on the website. I can give this experience out. Do you encourage us to do so, or do you suggest we burn the tapes and don't tell anybody?
Yes, for me, since I told you, this was very informative. I mean, as you can tell, I was taking notes. So I think it would be great if it was put on the website. But then I also think you should send out to people, you have this website.
Yeah, and I think we need to have follow-up meetings. Maybe the next time a few more folks will come along.
Has it been 12 months since you've had a meeting, or 15?
No, we meet monthly for our group, but we've never met with pastors. This is the first time we've ever met with pastors because I just felt we had to have a special meeting only with pastors, and I'm glad we did. I've learned a lot today. Tommy Joe.
I just wanted to say briefly that, I mean, those of you that are here, you're here for a reason, either because you're concerned about our country or the Lord stirred your heart to be here, or probably both for most of you. Don't just go home excited and think that you'll get on it next year. It is not too late. We have, 20 days until the election? And elections is where it all starts. It's everything that Tom's been talking about. Everybody in this room has an opportunity to still make a difference. However you'd like to be involved, I guess my first invite would be the next time the Tea Party has a meeting, come back and bring a friend who's involved in pastoral service with you. So that'll double our group. But between now and November 2nd, talk to your friends. Talk to the people in your congregation. In a year, hopefully we'll improve your comfort level with what you're allowed to do. But for now, you know, you do have private groups. You do talk to people when church is officially over. I lost my race last year by 1,100 votes. Of the whole county, that's not very many. The people in this room, talking to people in their church, could have changed that. And now it's not too late. It's not too late for this time. For me, for Todd, for any candidate that you do want to support. So I guess I just want to encourage all of you, if you're energized leaving here today and you think that God has put it on your heart to be involved in this, go do it. There's still plenty of time. We'd be happy to have your help in any capacity.
Yeah. And Todd, go ahead.
And I think the strongest biblical passage for me has always been the one in 1 Timothy that you were referring to, and that is that pray for leaders in power so that we may live peaceable lives among the pagans and so that many can be saved. And I think What's different about living here is we get our leaders from the participation of the people. That's why we are called to be engaged and to vote. Our leaders are raised up by people who vote for them. That means we have a responsibility. Their leaders were imposed on them, and they prayed for them too. But we pray for our leaders, and I think we should both pray that God would raise up godly leaders, but at the same time, to participate and vote, and that's the call for everyone to get involved.
We do. And on our website, if you go to the Portage County Tea Party website, yeah, it's on the agenda, we have videos of our candidates. We have surveys that they filled out, questionnaires. We have press releases. You'll see who we endorsed. So just driving your congregation members to go look at the website, get educated. Because quite frankly, we were stunned at how hard it is to find information about these candidates. You can't believe it. Our website has the best accumulation of information about every candidate running in Portage County and the state of Ohio that you're going to find anywhere. Anywhere. You know why? Because they've all come to speak to us. And you know why? Because Lanny and Brenda have spent the time and effort to videotape them and put on our website. And because our political committee has written them and asked them to fill out surveys. Because we knew people need that to make a decision. That's a resource that I want you to take back to your congregation this week and say, listen, you need to be informed what you're going to do voting. Go to this website, watch the video. It says 2010 candidates. You click on there, you can watch movies, you can see what they say. These are remarkable people. They are remarkable people. My heart goes out to Todd McKinney and Tommy Joe. You know, I said to Todd's wife, Brittany, I said, you know, what we're doing is important, but what you're doing as a family is a true sacrifice.
That's right.
I don't know why anybody runs, quite frankly, folks. The job doesn't pay that well. It's not worth it. Okay, and Todd to me is what I love most, and what I really believe we must really strive for, and that is reluctant citizen representatives. Reluctant. Todd to me is the classic reluctant candidate. I really get the feeling that he'd rather be doing something else, but he's called. He's called, and he's going to meet that calling. So I talked to our people, and you talked about going to these meetings, or when you can't make a difference and you're not sure why you go, and you said go to the meetings when you have no agenda, just to be there. We're starting to see that. Beth Pullen's been going to her township meetings. Don Rogers has been going to his meetings in Charlestown. And Chris has been going to his meetings. What's interesting is now they're waiting for you to come. And the trustees are talking to you. And you're sitting around in church. And just take yourself back to New England in the forming of our country. In the town hall meetings where the elders sat around. And they talked about what's going on in the community. And they'd say, we really need you to run for mayor. And the first thing I want you to say is, I'm not interested. And then we're going to come back a month later and say, we really need you to run for mayor. We need you. And your answer is, I got to talk to my wife. Okay? And then we come back and we say, please. And you say, I will. And you'll hate every minute of it. And you can't wait for it to be over. But you did your duty. That's who I want representing me. I don't want people who have no other life but to go to Washington and be on TV and want to be a star. I have no time for them. That's not service. That's ego. So I don't want the people who wave their hands and say, choose me, choose me. I want the quality people in our community that that are sitting in your pews, who can lead and lead reluctantly. And my perfect example is the school boards. There isn't a school board in Portage County that doesn't have at least a $19 million a year budget. And we got people that can't balance their checkbook running the school board. You think we might need some people who are businessmen who can handle having 150 employees and a $20 million budget on a school board? You need to recruit them. You need to go to that businessman and say, we need you to run for school board. And yes, I know you've never thought of that in your life. That's why I'm asking you. And then you need to come to us and to your congregation and say, I have this person who will be a public servant. Will you help us? And we'll train that person. And we will back that person. And we will elect that person. And after we elect that person, we will be in the crowd to support that person. And we will have better governance. It's that simple. And it's that hard.
I think when you understand that at least a third of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were ordained ministers. Over half of them were deacons and leaders in their particular congregations. Okay?
Yeah.
So I think it's absolutely vital that our religious leaders get involved in the political process. And I really don't know how to do it, but I came here simply because I'm passionate about it, I think we whatever part we have, whether we consider it to be large or small, it doesn't matter. Every part has its place, and it will all come together and it'll work.
Neil.
Tom, there's a website which has probably the largest and best collection of original documents that put church together with state. And that website is wallbuilders.com.
Yep, wallbuilders.com. Great website.
Help anybody to get them backup material.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you to everyone for coming. I greatly appreciate your sharing yourselves, your time, your thoughts with us. And we will get this video out, and you will hear about that when we do. And you'll be on our email list, so you'll be seeing all the crazy things we're up to going forward. And then we'll reach out to the other pastors, and I hope you will too as well. I hope you will reach out to other pastors and tell them you had a good time and tell them what the Tea Party is about. Thank you very much.